Kellen and Sarah, can you hear us?
I can.
All right. Turned over you now for the audit presentation.
Apologies about that. No, I could not hear you till right then. Bear with me as I share my screen. Can everybody see the presentation?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Fantastic. All right. Just a little bit of a background on the engagement team. My name is Kellen Gilbert. Been with Soren, previously Pacini Brinker, for about 16 years. Uh, Aria Bettinger was the quality control report reviewer. So a new face to the engagement team this year, just to get a little bit of a fresh perspective. And Sarah Owens continues to be the engagement supervisor for SCTA, Measure M, and Go Sonoma. So a little bit of background about Soren. So in May of 2025, Pacini and Brinker joined practices with a number of like-sized firms in similar-sized areas to rebrand as one united firm, Soren. This was a really important merger for us. It provides us with a lot of long-term resources and combined expertise, not only in the government realm, but also as we tackle big challenges within the public accounting industry, such as artificial intelligence and the future for auditing in general, while still giving us a local level of control that we felt was really important so that we could continue to serve our clients the way that we always have. So now that that is completed, we are a top 50 CPA firm. We have it's up to, I believe, 23 offices at this point and a little over 1,000 employees. And most importantly, that I really like telling my clients, there's not going to be any changes to your engagement team. There's no changes to the costs, the services that we're providing. Everything is staying the same. This is just giving us more resources to really put behind our audit practice. So the scope of the engagement, we were engaged to provide our opinion on whether the standalone financial statements of the Measure M Special Revenue Fund and Debt Service Fund and the Go Sonoma Special Revenue Funds were free of material misstatement. And those of you who have heard me speak before know that I always like to start with this slide, or I should say focus on this slide, the relative roles and responsibilities, just because there is a continued confusion about who does what during an audit. A lot of people believe that the auditors actually create the financial statements, but the financial statements are a product of management. All the decisions throughout the year that go into those financial transactions, that is all management decisions. They're responsible for maintaining a system of internal control to ensure the accuracy of the underlying financial information contained in those financial statements. And they're also responsible for making sure that the footnotes are complete. The auditor, we are responsible for providing our opinion on whether or not the financial statements are free of material misstatement. So in other words, are the financial statements materially accurate in our opinion? We do that through what's called a risk-based approach. And that means that we don't do a cookie cutter approach where we just test the statement of net position. We really want to assess where the risk of a material misstatement might occur and focus our time and resources in those areas. And that's in accordance with professional standards. We consider the inherent risk, which is the underlying complexity of transactions, and we also consider control risk, which is what are the risks that a control could fail that could cause a material misstatement or a material non-compliance. Once we performed our risk assessment, we perform a number of auditing techniques such as testing year-end balances, testing transactions throughout the year, reviewing the financial statement footnote disclosures, comparing those against disclosure checklists, and a number of analytical procedures, as well as compliance testing of transactions throughout the year. And again, I think I mentioned it, but just because of how important it is, we also evaluate the adequacy of the footnote disclosures. We want to make sure that all the disclosures that should be included are included and that there's no unnecessary footnote disclosures. This is a really rough pie chart of where our time and focus is spent during the audits. About 30% of the audit is for compliance testing. And really, I think I have a slide on that and coming up here. But really what we're focusing on is making sure that the expenditures are in accordance with the original ballot, in accordance with the strategic plan. Grant revenue, that's really more applicable to Measure M and will become less of a focus as activities are winding down going forward. Fiscal year-end balances, that's the statement of net position, making sure that all of those year-end accounts are stated correctly. Excuse me, I think I said the statement of net position, I meant balance sheet of governmental funds. And last but not least, the financial statements themselves, making sure that those are presented in accordance with the GASBs and all the footnote disclosures are appropriate. Those are not all the areas that we audit, but just really a rough idea of where we're spending our time. So as I mentioned, really for Measure M and Go Sonoma, compliance testing is very important. We want to make sure that those sales tax revenues are not only being recorded in the appropriate places, but also being spent appropriately. So for Measure M, we want to reconcile sales tax to bank statements to make sure that the amount reported is complete and accurate. We want to make sure that those funds, as they're allocated to the different sub-funds and activities within those financial statements, we want to make sure that those allocation percentages match up with the strategic plan. And then the actual expenditures themselves, we want to make sure that those are allowable under the plan and, again, being recorded in the right bucket of activities. And then last but not least was the bond activity, wanting to make sure that that was being paid and recorded correctly, which will again be going away going forward as those were completely paid off this year. Go Sonoma, very similar, wanting to make sure that the sales tax, 1/4 of sales tax were recorded in this fiscal year, wanting to make sure that those are being recorded appropriately, making sure that the allocation is in accordance with the strategic plan or the Go Sonoma strategic plan. And again, making sure that any expenditures that were made in the current period were made, again, in accordance with the plan in the right activity. So a little bit more on our auditing procedures. As I mentioned, we use a risk-based approach, which we established during our planning phase. We test the balance sheet items. We perform procedures such as subsequent disbursements testing and subsequent receipts testing to make sure that cutoff is correctly addressed and that the amounts are complete, exist, and are accurate as of year end. We test a sample of transactions throughout the year. We want to make sure that there's underlying support that those transactions occurred and that they were recorded accurately, and again, that they were in compliance. And I've said it before, but again, reviewing the financial statements, a very big part of the audit, again, making sure that those are presented in accordance with the GASBs, the Government Accounting Standards Board. Other testing procedures specifically over revenue other than the sales tax is making sure that we have grant agreements for Measure M, review board minutes and the strategic plan, analytical procedures, making sure that nothing jumps out to us that revenue would be vastly overstated or understated, and that the expenditures look reasonable. And again, reconciling unearned revenue and revenue recognized to receivables at year end, and internal grant tracking spreadsheets that really help us keep track of all the ongoing grant activity during the year. So the audit status and the opinion, the audit is complete. As of a couple days ago, we issued the financial statements on November 21st. We issued an unmodified opinion, which is a clean audit opinion. So that means that in our opinion, the financial statements are free of material misstatement and are accurately stated. And there were no instances of non-compliance for Measure M or Go Sonoma. And this last slide is communication to those charged with governance, which this committee is part of. This is required under professional standards. Again, reiterating the top line here, it was a clean audit. We didn't identify any instances of known or suspected fraud, which would have been reported to management. We did not propose any audit adjustments. We didn't identify any unusual transactions where there was a lack of accounting guidance. And there was no disagreements. This last bullet is very important. There was no disagreements with management over the scope of the audit. And what that means is that all the information that we asked for was provided to us. We weren't denied access to any information. We were provided all the audit evidence that we required so that we could do a full and complete and thorough audit. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions over the audit or the financial statements or my presentation or all of the above.
Thank you.
Jerry?
Yeah, the reason I'm going to ask a question. The first one is, first of all, I'm not an accountant or an auditor, and so all of this is pretty foreign to me. So the questions may be a little bit naive. One term that's used over and over again in the presentation is special revenue. I just want to understand what special revenue was. I'll give you all three questions.
Sure.
Go Sonoma is a bit more flexible than Measure M as far as spending. Will that make the audit less complicated to do over time? And the last one is this. Once a month, we show up here and we have 50 pages worth of spreadsheets that I would look at and try to understand. Can you give us some advice as to what specific part should we focus on? If you were here, what would you look for?
Three great questions. I will start with the second one, whether or not the financial statement audit will be less complicated. I think it might be on the margins, but I don't think it's significantly different than the Measure M funds. This year, given that it was a new financial statement, it was a little bit more challenging, but obviously didn't have a lot of activity. But overall, I would say it's slightly easier than Measure M, but just in the big scope of overall government financial statements, it's pretty similar to Measure M. We still have to test a lot of levels of compliance and a similar size sample in accordance with professional standards. So it's not that much less work from our perspective. A special revenue fund is a fund. A fund is kind of a tricky concept for non-accounting nerds like myself and Sarah. But a fund is basically, I try and think of it just as a basket of revenues. And a special revenue fund is a specifically designated type of government fund used to track revenues that are restricted for a specific purpose. So that's really why you would set up a special revenue fund. It's because you have those compliance requirements. You have the specific intent and use of those funds. And so you really want to isolate those from a general fund. You don't want to commingle those. So that's what a special revenue fund is. And then your last question, I totally understand. It's an overwhelming amount of information, especially for a committee that might only meet once a month. Really just have two suggestions. One, specifically relating to my financial presentation is I would look at the top line picture. We issued a clean opinion, no material non-compliance. That's a great sign that things are smooth. I would be more transparent if there were significant problems taking place. But I'm looking at this audit strictly from a yes/no perspective and not from a managerial perspective. That's not the point of an audit. So really, I would say the only other thing you can do as a board member is ask questions. If there is financial information that you're unsure about, I know that the SCTA team is very well versed and can help you better understand those spreadsheets. But I do understand that it can be overwhelming for anyone, really.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, then.
Thank you. Yes, that's the discussion we've had around this table several times, is that we're not experts in this area. Maybe Dennis has more experience than the rest of us, but most of us are not terribly expert. And last year, I think, requested some support or training on this, and I don't think that's happened in the past year. If it has, I have missed that. And the other matter that we've talked about in the past is just having confidence in these results and having perhaps another set of eyes. And we know Presenting and Brinker has been involved with this project since pretty much its inception, and now we've gone through a new tax authorization. And maybe staff could speak to this rather than the presenters, but I think we had gotten an assurance from James that we'd be going out to bid for another firm. And I think that would probably elevate everyone in this room's confidence about these financial reports, just to have another set of eyes looking at them. So without any shade on Presenting and Brinker and all the fine work you've done over the years, I'll be voting against recommending this to the board today, just to register that repeated concern that I have brought to this table before, but it is not intended as a mark against Presenting and Brinker specifically. I no longer have complete confidence in my ability and this committee's ability to review these reports. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may. So last October, the CEC did approve extending Presenting and Brinker's contract for additional 2 years to cover fiscal year 24-25 and 25-26. At that time, the idea was to help with the transition between Measure M and Co-Sonoma, as Presenting and Brinker is very familiar with our financial statements and how we administer the sales taxes. We thought they would be best to continue on as we work on the transition. We plan to do that request for proposal in collaboration with the Auditor Controller's Office to select a new auditor, and that will be occurring this fiscal year. So I do not have particulars on the time frame for when our Controller Office will be leading that procurement, but we are very confident Presenting and Brinker's work, now known as Soren, and happy to continue on with that relationship, whether through this contract extension or if they're able to be selected through the competitive procurement process for the next contract.
Thank you, David.
Thank you. Mark?
I differ in opinion. When a reputable local accounting firm audits a return and financial statements, I take that very seriously. That's the top level of accountancy, beyond reviewed financials. So I have 100% confidence in them.
Thank you. Dennis?
I second what Mark said, is that the financial statements as presented, I would very much recommend approval of them. And two, as relates to the internal statements, I think the history of those came from me, where I asked, so they're actually not complicated at all. Your first one is a balance sheet that's consolidated, and the rest of them are balance sheets by individual the activities that measure up with the tax measure. The most important thing is the yearly activity report by also by segment as is percentage, and then also cumulative year to date. So, or cumulative from the inception. So they aren't that complicated, but you know, if some kind of but anyway, they are cumbersome in that if you haven't read them, but they aren't really that complicated. And so that's my comment.
Thank you, Dennis. I hear there is a motion to approve the.
I'd make the motion to accept the financial statements as presented.
There is a second. All in favor? Or there is a discussion for this? I see no discussion. All in favor again? Anyone voting against or abstain?
I'm going to vote no, as I stated
Vote
earlier, and I'll just appreciate the conversation. I'm glad that we're having it again this year and look forward to progress on this front. Thank you.
We have a no vote and one abstention here. Thank you. And thank you for your presentation, and for your services.
Thank you very much.
Moving on, we have the City of Petaluma presentation. And we have 15 minutes for that item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members. Today we have Bjorn Griepenberg from the City of Petaluma, who is going to present on some projects that the City of Petaluma is receiving measure funds for. With that, I will be brief and just hand it directly over to Bjorn, who is joining us online today because he's not feeling well.
Thank you. Just checking to see if everyone can hear me okay.
Yes.
All right, great. I will share my screen. Hang tight here.
Great.
Okay.
All righty. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
All righty. So tonight I'll do my best to give you a quick update on our three active or recently completed Measure M and Go Sonoma projects, which include our Highway 101 bicycle and pedestrian crossing study, which just recently completed, the Lynch Creek Trail Improvements Project, and the Caulfield Lane Improvements Project. So first off, our Highway 101 pedestrian and bicycle crossing study, also identified in some SCTA documents as the Access Across 101 study. Initially was scoped to look at 4 locations. As the study neared completion, we had enough budget remaining to add an additional crossing location to the scope. So we looked at the Corona Road overcrossing, the Rainier Avenue undercrossing, Lynch Creek Trail crossing of North McDowell Boulevard near US 101, the Washington Street overcrossing of US 101, and the Mackenzie Avenue pedestrian crossing of 101 behind the Target shopping center. And so the scope of work for each of these locations was to look at existing conditions and do some technical analyses on opportunities and constraints, engage the community through 3 public meetings and an online survey on to get the community's feedback on what is or isn't working at each of these crossing locations. And then also, and then lastly, the key deliverable was to develop conceptual designs and cost estimates. And in some cases, that was for both near-term recommendations and long-term recommendations. So out of this study, we did develop several really helpful concept designs, which we can now take forward as we work towards implementing, pursuing funding and implementing improvements at each of these locations. So this is just a snapshot of some of the visuals and concepts that came out of the study. And happy to send this final report your way if you're interested in reading it. It's also up on our city website. But I'll just highlight one of the really exciting ones here is on Corona Road, where the consultant developed a really exciting concept for a new bicycle and pedestrian pathway that's on a freeway overcrossing that currently lacks both pedestrian and bicycle facilities. We have had a couple of bicycle fatalities on or near this overcrossing. And so these improvements, we are hoping to be able to deliver in tandem with a Caltrans railing replacement project that's currently scheduled for 2031. So a really good outcome of this study is having a nice solid conceptual design, something that we can now move forward towards design and hopefully get the project funded and move into construction in tandem with that Caltrans project. So this study kicked off in December of 2023, and I just mentioned we just received the final report from the consultant. And as I mentioned, so with each of these individual study locations now, we will bring these forward for council's consideration alongside a lot of other city projects and priorities for consideration in the city's 5-year capital improvement program, which is adopted with our annual budget. And of these 5 locations, we do now have one of the conceptual designs is included in our 5-year was included in last year's 5-year CIP, and that's the Corona Road overcrossing for the reasons I just mentioned. The study was delivered for about $250,000 in Measure M funds and supplemented with some local funds. And our next one is Lynch Creek Trail, so I'll roll right into that. This is a project to complete paving on what really is our city's primary east-west crosstown connector for people walking and biking. Lynch Creek Trail is a 2.5-mile trail that runs from our downtown all the way to the eastern edge of our community. And along the way, it also serves several schools and parks, including Lucchese Park and our community center. So in recent years, we've made really good progress on either upgrading paving on sections that were in poor shape or paving sections that were previously unpaved. And we have just two sections remaining in white here, section between Edith and Payran Street, which is a dirt section. So with this project, we would be paving that. And then we have a section that's in pretty bad shape from the confluence with Lynch Creek up to North McDowell Boulevard. That's a section that was originally paved in asphalt that has not performed very well due to our expansive soils. So the plan is to demolish that asphalt pathway and replace it with concrete. And then along the this entire stretch between Water Street, downtown, and North McDowell, our goal is ultimately to fully light this section. It's the busiest section of trail that we have. And we're going to tackle as much lighting as we can through this project, but it's unlikely we'll be able to fully deliver lighting on this entire segment here. And that was a recent scope adjustment that we made to this project. So I mentioned the project description, concrete pathway along the 0.2 mile unpaved section from Edith to Payran, new ADA compliant access and egress to a major trailhead at Payran Street, replacing that damaged asphalt along 0.3 mile from Lynch Creek to North McDowell Boulevard, and then getting as much lighting infrastructure as we can concurrent with this, or in tandem with this project. And if funding allows, with our bidding, we will light as much as we can through this project. Here's a snapshot of some of those existing conditions, the access from Payran Street, so you can see the need for ADA access and paving. And then here are conditions nearby at the Payran Street undercrossing, where you can see not only, it's a little dark under that undercrossing, and you can imagine what it's like out here at night, very dark on the trail, but then also just showing the dirt conditions on that section. So this one is nearing final design, and we're going to get this out to bid hopefully by the end of the year, and then roll into construction, ideally in spring of 26. And hopefully next time I talk to you next fall, this project will be complete. Cost of the project, this is being delivered. We're estimating a shy of $2 million project being delivered with 1.6 million, a little over 1.6 million in Ghost Sonoma funds. And then our third and final project is the Caulfield Lane Active Transportation Improvements Project. This is really a complete streets project on Caulfield Lane between Payran Street and Garfield Drive, about a 1.5 mile stretch of one of our major crosstown connectors. The project includes maintenance and rehabilitation of the roadway along that entire length. We do have some varying conditions with the pavement condition, so there are some sections that don't need to be fully rehabilitated. With this project, Caulfield Lane is far under capacity, including projected future, accounting for future traffic volumes, even if we are successful in building the Caulfield Lane and extension and bridge in the coming years. The projected increase in traffic still does not warrant having 4 lanes along this roadway as we do today. So with this project, we would look to reduce vehicle lanes from 4 to 2 or 3 wherever there are any turning movements necessary. With that extra room now, we would upgrade the bike lanes from what they are today, just typical on-street painted bike lanes, increasing the level of separation and protection from traffic by implementing protected or buffered bike lanes. We're excited about the opportunities to convert a couple of existing always stop controlled intersections at both Eli Boulevard South and St. Francis Drive to roundabout intersections, which would improve both safety and traffic flow. We want to, as we do with all projects, add and enhance all crosswalks and upgrade all curb ramps. And here's just a look at some of the existing conditions out there. We really have 2 different kind of typical street configurations. There's a lengthy section, about half of it looks like this, where you've got really no driveway access or cross streets. You can see the sound walls. So this is a section where we would reduce the lane to or reduce the roadway to 1 lane in each direction. And then you've got some sections, particularly east of Cornella Drive, where you do start to see residential land uses, driveways, more cross streets. This is a location where we would recommend 3 lanes, so 1 in each direction plus a 2-way left turn lane. This project, we are just about to kick off design with a consultant. And so we just run environmental design and right-of-way concurrently, not anticipating any significant level of environmental review because it's a standard roadway maintenance project. And likewise with right-of-way, not anticipating anything major. We will need a Caltrans encroachment permit, but that's not a major challenge. And so the goal for this project would be to wrap up all of that design and project development work by next fall, go out to bid next winter, and get this started in construction in spring of 2027, and then wrap it up by the end of 2027. This project is currently estimated a little shy of $4 million. That number is subject to change as we get further into design. But for the time being, we're anticipating $455,000 in local funds as our match for approximately close to $2.3 million in Ghost Sonoma funds, and a little over $1 million in SB1 local partnership program formula funds. And so any funding shortfalls will be covered through our local funds, but we're obviously moving forward with this thanks in large part to the outside funding we've received through Ghost Sonoma and SB1. And that's it for me on these 3 projects. So happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for the presentation. In fact, I'll start with one question about the highway 101 pedestrian overcrossing study. What's the cost for, the proposed, improvements presented in your presentation?
Are you specific to Corona Road? Or
I'm talking about the highway 101 overcrossing, the first presentation.
yeah, so
You
study.
presented in the study, some preliminary designs for overcrossing pedestrian, but you did not tell us what's the cost of constructing the
Gotcha.
improvements.
So we have cost estimates based on the conceptual designs for each of the locations. And I can pull those up if you're interested in the estimates at a specific location. Like I mentioned, there were 5 different crossing locations where they developed some conceptual improvements.
So that's your answer?
Did you pull them up? It's fine.
He is drunk.
Oh, yeah. I can pull those up for you. Sorry. Let me
Do you want to see all 5 of the cost estimates or just one in particular? There were 5 different locations.
Yeah,
that
the
were studied.
5, yeah.
Okay. He's looking for all 5, please, Bjorn.
all
If
5.
it is time consuming, we can discuss it later, but we can open it for more questions.
If I could append to that, is it your understanding that the first of those Corona Road was intended as your highest priority project of those that you conceptually evaluated?
There was no relative prioritization done through this between the different locations. That's really been left to um, staff and ultimately city council, I think, to prioritize based on the different project delivery opportunities. So I mentioned, I mean, the real driver with Corona Road being added to our 5-year CIP last year was the fact that there is that upcoming Caltrans project to replace the railings on the Corona overcrossing, which so that's, of the 5 projects to us, that's the most time sensitive based on that opportunity for cost
Thank you for that
savings.
clarification. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark?
Are the 2 south projects of the 5, they're both bike ped crossings, right? One is kind of part of Washington overcrossing and the other one's Mackenzie, correct?
Yes.
Aren't they
So
kind of close together, geographically
so
speaking?
yeah, and so originally we
What's
were
the
looking at,
importance to Petaluma to have 2 so close together?
so we originally looked at Mackenzie, and that crossing is an interesting one. It's not it was constructed by Caltrans, I believe, in the 1970s. It's not ADA compliant. To make it ADA compliant would require demolishing the structure and completely replacing it with a new one. So through the study, we kind of we got into this discussion of the pros and cons of that level of investment in an existing structure that does, although it's not doesn't meet ADA compliance, it does provide some mobility benefit to the city. And then you also have nearby the Washington Street overcrossing, which is used by more people. That corridor does serve, obviously, a much higher level of activity and traffic, and even people walking and biking. So then the discussion kind of became, would you invest that money in replacing the Mackenzie overcrossing, which again is providing some level of mobility today, or would you put it into making the Washington Street overcrossing safer or potentially building a new overcrossing along that Washington corridor? And ultimately, these are, this study is really intended to provide council with the information they need to make these tough decisions as they weigh which projects to prioritize and which projects they want us to pursue and seek funding for.
Angela, you have a question?
Yeah, I'm curious about the pay ran one that you showed, it was hard to tell, but how much consideration did you give for flooding in that area? Is it going to be passable for pedestrians and others when the water comes?
Yeah, it's, we I would expect the same degree of flooding today as there or in with the improvements as there would be today. So I'm not aware of any recent flooding activity at that undercrossing that made it impassable, but that's not to say it doesn't or can't happen. I'm sure it has happened, knowing that stretch of river and some of the challenges there. Um, but the reality is that with or without the improvements, it likely would flood in that area with a significant rainfall plus high tides. I'm assuming so. The project will not fully protect that section against any temporary impacts during major flooding events. But again, I'm not aware of any that have occurred in recent memory in that section.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Going back to my question, would you be able to share the study with us, just to take a look? And because, some of these, proposals, I think they are very expensive, like to build, these pedestrian overcrossings, and funding them, the study is good to have, but we need a roadmap, to build them.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the study is linked. Maybe David may have just put it in the chat. There, he just did. So the study is available at cityofpetaluma.org/101 crossings. And again, would be happy to also share via email if anyone would like it that way. So I did list my contact information in the slides that will be published to this agenda.
Mr. Chair, we'll be sure to send out Bjorn's presentation along with a link to the final report after the meeting.
Thank you, David.
That was a question I had because I saw we had this on the agenda, but I couldn't find any material in our handout for us to review ahead of time.
We will do the presentations after the project sponsor has been here. We will provide you with the entire presentation, but often the project sponsors are working up to the meeting to put it
I'd
together.
like to get prepped before I show up in the room so I have an idea of what we're going to see.
Thank you. Tom?
One question on the 5 overcrossings. Since you already have an undercrossing at Lynch and an overcrossing at Mackenzie, and they're both somewhat substandard, which of the 5 projects would you expect to see the most initial use, given shopping, school, housing patterns in Petaluma? Which would see the most use right off the bat once completed?
Well, so that's another interesting. This isn't necessarily proposing new overcrossings or new connections. In some cases, it's just upgrades to existing ones. So Lynch Creek Trail, for example, the recommended upgrade there is a new signalized crossing that serves the trail so that there isn't trail users don't need to detour in order to cross North McDowell Boulevard. So it kind of depends, right? On obviously with new connections, you will see new trips induced. With enhancements to existing connections. You might not see a significant increase in usage, but you'll see I think an increase in safety. So with that being said, though, I would consider our most popular bicycle and pedestrian crosstown connection is definitely Lynch Creek Trail. I would guess the Smart Trail is probably number 2 behind that. So the Rainier undercrossing concept actually provides improved connectivity between Rainier Avenue and the Smart pathway.
Okay, thank you.
One more question.
One quick question on the lighting. Are you going towards solar?
No, we are actually moving towards a wired solution. We did test wired or solar lighting out on the trail with a recent section that was upgraded, and have just found that it has not been reliable out there, and especially with plans to continue to increase tree canopy on the trail. We felt that, and we have some electrical services out there, so we are eager to work towards a wired solution that we think will be much more reliable and robust.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bjorn.
Thank you.
Thank you. The Measure M finances.
Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. Good evening. Time change. I don't know what time it is. All right, so we'll be going over the Measure M and Go Sonoma financials for the month ending October 31st. And this was one, if you remember last month, we talked about several large charges hitting right after the month was finished. And so those are not going to appear here. They hit at the very first day of November this month. So we'll see those at the next CAC meeting, and I'll go over those when we get to them. But so this is the Measure M Go Sonoma financials for the month ending October 31st. And the order of materials here are the Measure M balance sheets and cash flow reports, and then Go Sonoma balance sheets and cash flow reports. Starting next month, we're going to flip those orders. Go Sonoma is now the active program, so it makes sense to present that material first. So the revenues for Go Sonoma, we're starting with Go Sonoma for the PowerPoint presentation because that is the active tax. Revenues were just over 2.8 million in October, and year-to-date revenues for Go Sonoma are $5,413,000 for the year. And the expenses were low. This is what I was referring to, $149,481. These are mostly operating expenses. They do not include the large payment to the Go Sonoma Roads and Transit, which occurred right at the end of October, the beginning of November. And year-to-date expenses for Go Sonoma are just over $303,000. And Go Sonoma has a cash balance of $13,328,136. So as we see the revenues here, $2,760,000 were sales tax revenues. That's the Go Sonoma tax. And then $62,119 was the quarterly interest revenue. All right, this slide compares the Go Sonoma taxes for the month and year to date compared to Measure M from last year. As you see, the October taxes were considerably higher than they were Measure M last year. I went back and looked at the sales tax reports that we received to see what happened. And our November taxes for Measure M were quite a bit higher. This was an unusually low month last year. So I believe that what this represents is a large payer who paid late, some kind of processing issue. It doesn't show up in the sales tax report. We have it beyond the lower level, but I anticipate this not to be representative. It'll probably adjust back to more normal starting next month. But it's still good news, right? It's a nice normal month of payment, and our year-to-date earned are up 9.9% from where we were last year. And the year-to-date received, which is everything we've received in July, August, and September, is up 3.5% from where we were last year. So I think on the whole, these represent good numbers, but we'll have to wait until November's, because of last year's odd payment, we'll have to wait until November to get a better picture. October expenses, $149,000. It was $98,316 in consulting services and $51,164 in staff time. These are low. They're going to be raising considerably starting next month. All right, and now we move on to Measure M financials. So the Measure M tax is done. So the $800,441 in revenues, low, but other than reimbursable programs, that's probably going to be more normal, as we'll see when we get to the next slide. Year-to-date or monthly expenses were $1,333,000, and with year-to-date expenses just over 1.5 million, and Measure M is still sitting on a large cash balance of $77,783. And that is the Highway 101 fund that's just going to be slowly spent down.
So how much of the $77 million are committed, to projects?
I don't know what percentage are actually programmed or apportioned, but because it's all in the Highway 101 fund, it will be paid out through Highway 101 programs. David probably has a better timeline on when that's going to be paid out and programmed, but it's going to be over many years.
Do we have any sense at all how many years it is until the money's gone?
I don't know. David, do you know approximately how long you're thinking for Highway 101?
So for Highway 101, we do have ongoing mitigation monitoring for some of the project permits that require 10 years of monitoring through 2032. So we'll be having some expenditures through that long. We're hopeful on some of the other programs such as local streets projects and biking ped to get those programs closed out sooner. With our SCTCA funding program cycle 2, we're hoping to program the last of those LSP and biking ped dollars to projects, but those still will have no project expenditures till probably at least at a minimum mid-2027s, and then probably a few years after that. So
Reasonably close in.
yeah, so I think hopefully we'll wrap up all of Measure M by early 2032, but we'll have to wait and see.
Okay. Thank you, David. Yes, so here we have October revenues. It was entirely interest on that pooled cash. There will be a few other types of revenues still with the Measure M program. We have some programs that are reimbursed, like the Safe Route to School program it's a reimbursable program, so we receive federal reimbursement for those expenditures, but that's small in comparison with the rest of the program. All right, the October expenses of 1.33 million, just 1,185,000 of that was contributions to other governments. That was mostly a large payment to Santa Rosa for the Hearn overcrossing, $58,000 in consulting services, and $45,500 in staff time. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Question, Jerry?
Real fast question. The 13 million that Go Sonoma has in cash, how much does it owe?
Yes, it does. It received a fairly reasonably sized loan from Measure M. I don't have the exact number right here, but I want to say it was in the $5 million range. Yeah.
Any other questions? I see none online, so we'll move. Thank you for the.
Sorry, real fast. So if it was $5 million, so the $77 million in cash that we see for Measure M would really be $82 million. Is that right?
I'm sorry, can you please repeat the question?
You had, I think the number was $77 million in cash for Measure M, and Go Sonoma owes Measure M $5 million. So really, Measure M has $82 million to spend.
We'll receive, yeah, the 77 million is just the cash that Measure M has on hand. Yeah.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the 2025 annual draft report.
Good afternoon. So you may have noticed we did a last minute addition to the agenda. Just right within Brown Act requirements, and that's because we were feverishly working to get it complete. So this is something a little bit different than previous years. We are working on combining the Measure M, Go Sonoma, and formerly SCTA RCPA annual report into one document. And so that is the content that we sent out for review in its truly roughest form. This is just text. So this is going to be, as you'll see, it's actually divided kind of the old annual report, just the SCTA was basically a marketing document, whereas the Go Sonoma and Measure M had, much more financial detail included. So we're kind of still including that level of detail. And that's really what we'd like to ask the CAC to review is the Go Sonoma and Measure M information in there. I'm happy to take comment on the annual report content, but do realize that that's kind of outside of the purview. But this is in kind of a rough form, so you may not have seen it like that. But the next step basically is, we'd like to gather feedback. If you have any, we'll accept it now. However, you can also communicate with us in the coming weeks. We are hoping to get it to the graphic designer relatively soon. And then we will be back to the CAC in late January with, before it goes to the board, with a version that is actually, has the images and it is a fully realized kind of document. So that's what we're presenting, and I apologize for the late addition. It is a chunk of text, but this is the way that it's going to be laid out, and this is kind of our attempt to really bring together, as we're often talking about, the climate and transportation sides, but also, rather than having all these different disparate documents, we actually want to bring it all together. So please let us know if you have any feedback now. Happy to take feedback, or you can also communicate directly with Shauna and I as we move forward. And I want to see if Shauna has any addition to what I'm saying here. Actually, want to make sure I don't miss anything.
The only thing I have to add, thank you, Ross, is that it has been condensed a little in the attempt to bring this document, these two documents together. We have tried to streamline what we provided to you because it is the last year of Measure M. Things are winding down. Doesn't need to be quite so detailed because we just don't have the same level of activity that we have had in the past. So some of those sections might look a little bit abbreviated to you, but essentially all the information is still there. We've provided you with all of the same tables. We have eliminated all of the information sheets because those are now available online. And we keep those more up to date. As you know, the annual report is only produced once a year. So to provide a information sheet on each one of those projects was really just a snapshot in time. Now you can get real-time updates. We have those information sheets updated as often as we get information, it goes online. So those are far more current than what you would have seen in an annual report. That's it.
Thank you. And I'll open it to questions or comments. Angela?
Yeah, the only thing I would be concerned about is losing any information in the condensing, but you've already spoke to that, so that's good. Thanks.
My comment is that being that it's really summarizing the end of Measure M, I was looking kind of forward to that summary of executive summary of each one of those programs, and to the funds that are left in each one of those funds, how they're, so back to Jerry's point, is that how are those going to be spent forward? And so as I was going through this, to say, like on Highway 101, we're talking about again, landscaping maintenance and this whatever requirements and other commitments. Just that kind of a summary would be great to give people an idea of what is happening with the remaining leftover funds, and that they are still going to be spent according to the tax measure. So I appreciate what you said. For us to go, so what I used to be able to do is to present that to our group, is saying, here's a great summary, a great read if you want to see what we did for Measure M. And so it did give me that alternative. If I said, go look at the website, it's never going to happen. So anyway, I look forward to that, and you did a marvelous job over the years. And maybe just as a final sum up of that Measure M, that would be a good thing to consider.
Happy to add that in. Thank you.
Any other questions? Tim?
I just had an observation as I glanced through, and I didn't give it a close read, but one of the issues we've talked about in the past on this report is the lack of standardization between the different jurisdictions on their local repair, that's right, local street rehabilitation program. And my cursory review suggested that the county did a better job this time. Still not standard with some of the other jurisdictions, but they seem to be making an effort. Did anyone else notice that, or am I just reading into my hopes that that's the case?
Jerry?
I'll give it a closer read. Thank you.
Jerry?
As well, I didn't give it a close read. I totally missed the point that when it was, our agenda was updated, that something was added to the agenda. So I didn't see it at all. But just looking at the outline, one of the questions I have is about mascots. And where mascots is and whether it belongs in the report, whether it's been approved as the approach going forward. And if it has, then it would be a major part. Would you want to see in the report? Because we would expect an awful lot of projects to launch as a result of that.
I mean, I'll just say that since we're looking back at the year, that there was a significant amount of work that went into it. So many of these are in progress things. We could talk to Dana and get some more information about exactly where she wants to cut that off, the information, for 2025. But we definitely wanted to include it because it was something that we put a lot of effort into, even if it's still in progress.
Thank you. I see a question.
Probably an insignificant point, but the report calls out the Hearn Avenue interchange project as being completed. So obviously this is preemptive as of January 26th. But just note also the 116, 121 roundabout project is not quite complete either. So I don't know, just semantics, but be ready in case they're not done.
Right. There are some assumptions being made. Absolutely. I guess these will be, and to be clear, the way we're going to handle these is kind of call out boxes within the text, just because they're kind of overarching progress. But yeah, we'll have to see exactly what tense we want to use in terms of being done. But I know, we got ribbon cutting on the 11th, and I think they're actually going to announce something possibly even a little bit sooner regarding Hearn. So. But thank you for that. I'll double check that. And I'll just say that definitely, I know there wasn't a lot of time. Please feel free to send us anything that comes up. And if we do need to have some more discussion, there could be opportunities for that too. But realistically, the next meeting isn't going to be until late January. So,
You have a question?
Maybe I'm just echoing some of the other 101 comments, but as that winds down to relatively small scale stuff like monitoring and landscaping, it'd be good to have a significant section on here's one of the largest construction projects in the county and delivered as promised, and it cost this much all told with the financing, the bonds and so forth that were necessary. That's a question I get asked by people I know who know I'm on this committee. How much did that cost? And maybe say something about the level of service, hopefully improvements that we've seen on that. Second point, under comprehensive transportation plan, I think in a previous presentation, you mentioned something about equity areas like the Springs and the Lower Russian River. And would you expound on that in this document, that this is where we're going in these areas?
I called them out last meeting, just, in kind of the geographical equity questions that were coming up. I don't know. I'll have to talk to the planning team to see how much detail they want to put in this, because basically this document, we want someone to say, oh, that CTP looks interesting. I'm going to go look at that. We're really, because I don't know I do know that won't be complete by the time this is complete. This right now, annual report is running ahead of CTP. So that said, certainly we'll speak a little bit to the spirit of it, and, where we're trying, getting into lesser served communities. I mean, that gets said a lot. So I really want to make sure that it's clear that's what we're doing. So I think, to answer your question, I'm not sure how much detail we'll get into about the CTP outreach and whatnot. We're just trying to direct people to the plan.
Okay.
But
Thank you.
one of Tom's points in general, I've brought this up in the past in the report. I think it's important in the report to be able to show that the monies that we have leverage an awful lot more money. That is, that's the seed money that allows us to get grants and money from other, entities. And I don't think it's emphasized enough in the report for people to understand. People still think that when we pay our fares on the buses, that's paying for the bus. That's not the case.
Right.
That's a great point.
Or the highways are paying their own way.
Yeah, well, that's another.
Right.
Okay.
Just one more small comment. I like the humanity part of the report. I like the appreciation called out to Drew and to Dawn.
Yeah.
I really like it, whoever's idea that was.
That's continuing a tradition from before my time, but
I don't recall it from the past, but I
think that's,
appreciate it now.
it wasn't included with like the Go Sonoma and Measure M. It's, we had this whole separate document, which was often just included kind of as a footnote here. So now, yeah, thank you.
I would like, what Dennis has said, like if you can produce a one-page thing or so to summarize, what project Measure M funded and achieved. And, as probably Jerry, said also to include how we leveraged, how much money we leveraged, from Measure M, we can use it, like you can use it in a press release and we can use it to, just educate our membership, organizations.
We know that the Measure M highway funds were leveraged at a 5-to-1 rate.
Yeah.
And that's been in a lot of our press releases. But yes, your points are well taken. We will try to add an additional summary of the measure as it winds down.
Okay, thank you. We'll move to item 6, the community-based transportation plans. And hello.
Good evening, everyone. I realize I stand between you and Thanksgiving, so I'll try to make it as entertaining as possible. And thank you for your engagement, even though it's a holiday week. I am here to speak to you about the community-based transportation plans. As just previously mentioned, these are areas targeted by equity priority communities. So I think this ties back in very well. So a little bit about it, you may have heard before, community-based transportation plans, or CBTPs, are now in the final phase of their projects. We have draft plans out and they're available online. The links are provided in the staff report. The Technical Advisory Committee for these plans, or TAC, has reviewed them and provided comments, and now they're making their rounds through all of the committees. And at this point, we would really appreciate feedback and comments on these 2 draft plans, and we can get started. So the purpose of a CBTP is it's a regional program funded by MTC, implemented by the county transportation authorities like ourselves. And each plan includes very specific segments of the community, equity priority communities that are recognized by MTC based on demographics, income levels, and data analysis. Eventually, they culminate to a community prioritized list of projects that will inform how we can improve mobility in each specific area. And once we assess what the priorities are at a grassroots level, we can work on getting funding to implement these types of plans through various funding programs responsible and other responsible agencies in the region. Here you can see a map of the equity priority communities in the Bay Area, Northern Bay Area. You can see in Sonoma County, there's a specific area closer to Santa Rosa, and then in the West County. Previously, we had CBTPs in Santa Rosa for the Roseland area back in 2007, the Russian River area, the Springs, and Central Healdsburg. If you're curious about what happened to these plans, we do track them in the Comprehensive Transportation Plan, or CTP. It is updated every 5 years, and that's a good way to hold us accountable to how the progress is going. And once the CTP is published next year, you can see how far along we are in each of these plans. Another look at the map, and here we can target specifically in Sonoma County the completed CBTPs, and in the green dots are the ones that we worked on this year. And for the specific areas that we're looking at in the EPCs, we have South Santa Rosa Avenue and Central Runner Park. Here we have the first study area. This is South Santa Rosa Avenue. It's the southern portion of Santa Rosa, a little bit of an unincorporated section of the county. Most of the feedback tended to be around Santa Rosa Avenue and how challenging it is to navigate. You can see someone taking a photo. And I can also share this PowerPoint if you're interested in, and a lot of maps and graphics are available in the draft plans. Here we have the study area for Central Runner Park, and a lot of the feedback we received was very specific to speed. Now, a question we get a lot is, don't cities already have a bunch of transportation plans with project lists? And we understand that there's a lot of engagement fatigue. It's definitely feedback that we do receive. However, this is a very grassroots level type of engagement. There is door knocking. We're going specifically into the neighborhood level, to the grocery stores, and we're getting very specific feedback from people that may not be heard in a lot of these engagement projects. And in addition, by targeting these specific projects, it does help make these areas more eligible for other types of grants than other plans may do. And it really opens up opportunities for them. So our CBTP team was comprised of SCTCA staff from both cities, Santa Rosa and Runner Park, a consultant team from Fern Pierce, Latino service providers, Leshner Planning, and Cordova Corporation. We had community representative committees for each study area. And these are community members that were very engaged and very actively discussed the plan with us and that live in the community, and their feedback was very valuable. And then we had a technical advisory committee that overlapped between both study areas, and those were local agencies and service providers that function with both areas. During the first phase of engagement, the goal was to understand the community's needs and challenges. We had 3 TAC meetings, 1 CRC meeting. We had a website with an online survey that made the rounds. We had 6 focus groups and 9 pop-ups in the study areas. And we did that for both study areas. Once we got a good sense of what the community needed during the second phase of engagement, we wanted to prioritize the community's needs. So we brought a large list of projects and solutions that we could probably try to address. And we had the community prioritize these types of projects. At this phase, we had 2 TAC meetings, 2 CRC meetings, a website survey, and a transportation resource fair in each study area. The one in Runner Park was at John Reed Elementary School. We had several booths, lots of engagement, and a taco truck, which was very popular. We also had Taylor Mountain Elementary School for Santa Rosa. Same setup, also very popular taco truck. So recommend that for your engagement events. And We provided resources from all of these partners and got a lot of good feedback from everyone. We also had an activity where people could have a dynamic graphic of what a street could look like, and they could Velcro, like whether they wanted cars there or a bike lane there. So it was a very dynamic setup. So diving into the CBTP projects, we have this Excel. This is the long list of the ideas that emerged from phase one. We took it to the community and they then proceeded to prioritize which ones they really wanted to see in the community. In Rohnert Park, we had the following 5 categories. And in Santa Rosa, we had the 4 categories come up the most. And it's also important to note that Santa Rosa Avenue overlaps a lot with the other categories in the Santa Rosa project types of categories. It's just, there was a lot of concern over that corridor. So here we have a map of the South Santa Rosa Avenue suggested improvements. Let me move. So amongst the projects suggested by the community, they wanted a shared use path on Yolanda Avenue, and there was a lot of interest in connection to Taylor Mountain. So that was part of that. There was a lot of interest in re-envisioning Santa Rosa Avenue, making it a lot safer for bikes and peds. There was interest in improving city bus connectivity and adding connections on Hearn Avenue and Todd Road, which feeds into the fourth suggestion for city bus Highway 101 crossing right there on Todd Road. Then for fifth on Colgan Avenue, they wanted a shared use path right there. And finally, oh wait, there's 2 more. Sixth, they want a direct connection to Taylor Mountain and Kiwanis Springs Road with improved sidewalks there and improved multimodal connectivity along Petaluma Hill Road. This is the list of projects. These are not necessarily ranked, but we do have a more extensive description of each project, which agencies could be the lead. Very, very broad sense of what the cost could be depending on the type of project that we end up building there, whether it's a quick build or more permanent. But the dollar signs are meant to be suggestions that are more dynamic once we actually try to implement them. For Central Rohnert Park, we have the following projects. We wanted to re-envision Snyder Lane, lots and lots of feedback on that specific road and the speeds that people were concerned about. We wanted to install speed management infrastructure on State Farm Drive, add sidewalks on Seed Farm Drive, install a multi-use path on Golf Course Drive, and also connect to the nearby schools. Then a transit stop and access improvements along Commerce Boulevard. A lot of interest in making Southwest Boulevard more bikeable and safe for people. Buffered bike lanes were suggested on Adrian Drive. And a lot of feedback on improved access to Evergreen Elementary School by moving a transit stop there. That would make it a little more accessible.
Can you wrap up your presentation to leave some time for questions?
Yes. And finally, improvements to Copeland Creek overcrossing. Details on the projects. This is the current timeline that we're on, and it'll go to the board December 8th. And yeah, that's it.
Thank you. We'll open it to questions.
As usual.
Jerry.
When I saw the presentations and I looked at them, they sound like they're part of the CARE program for MTC, are they?
They are eligible for those grants.
Okay, because I only saw, when I looked at all the grants that were being considered, there was $18 million worth of grants that were asked for with something like $3 million available. There was only one from Sonoma County, which surprised me because there were hundreds and only one from our county. So I didn't understand why that was the case. And I'm hoping that we would apply for more. The other question that occurred to me when I looked at the specific plans, and there's a lot there, so it's hard to get the details. If Mascots goes forward, our transit will look different. Is it likely that a lot of the projects might have a different orientation as a result of thinking about things a different way?
Thank you for the question. Maybe Dana can elaborate, but mascots was involved during the process and considered.
I don't think that there would be major changes. I think that the main things that are being looked at that are kind of at the neighborhood level that these community-based transportation plans address would be improving scheduled timing and routing to smart stations. So I think that we're not talking about major rerouting in these particular neighborhoods.
The
through
one in
mascots.
particular that I thought about when it said, oh, the Roanoke Park downtown, I go, where the heck is the Roanoke Park at?
It's coming.
And then the State Farm site is right next to the train station, and that looks like where Roanoke Park would like to have a downtown. And I could imagine many of the projects that were there would be reoriented when I have a downtown and I have a train station. That's my primary way to get from point A to point B. I ride the train now. There's kids on the train all the time, and that's the way to get to school, or that's the way to get to fun. And I see changes might be occurring.
Yeah. And then if I could also just touch on your question about the CARES program.
Yeah.
There are 3 different phases of the CARES grant, and the first one that's gone through is to be applied for by community-based organizations. There is an upcoming program, I believe, that's supposed to come out next year that actually has some implementation funding that the projects in the CBTP would be eligible for.
Okay, Tim?
Follow up to that. So these community-based transportation plans, there have been a number of them done in other parts of the county prior. But I think MTC's criteria and these grant criteria may have changed. And I'm curious too about the outreach methods, because it sounds like you're getting more sophisticated in how deep you reach into the communities, which is what MTC's intention is, I believe. So my question really is, do our old plans meet the new grant requirements? And can we imagine projects in those areas also qualifying for those kinds of funds?
I believe they're still eligible. There was a lot of mention about the changing criteria, and they're still being included in Plan Bay Area 2050 plus, correct? The past CBTPs?
The past CBTPs would be eligible for the upcoming CARES grants. And I mean, that's sort of a blanket statement. There may be some nuances, but in general, it'll be looking for projects that have been noted in CBTPs. Thank you.
Okay. Final questions.
Yeah, on the big picture, I mean, some years ago, Dana and I were talking about car share, and that never really did get started in Sonoma County. We do now have bike share. But I just heard in the last couple of days that the state has issued a license to Waymo to operate in Marin and Sonoma County. I mean, long term, one would hope that self-driving technology is going to affect our public transit. I guess one has to be skeptical. I mean, what's the first reaction I get when I mention Waymo is, well, it's more expensive still than Uber. I don't know how true that is, but you know,
20% more expensive.
Yeah, the real-time pricing and everything, it changes things faster than you might think. But you know, at some point, our public transportation planning will be more impacted by technology than is currently staring us in the face, but it will be in time.
Thank you, because we are running out of time. Short question.
Short question. In your public outreach efforts and meetings, do people get presented with options for bike lane designs like class 1, 2, 3, and 4, et cetera? And do they come back and say, I really want a curb between me and traffic at this speed? And put their marker down. Do you get a lot of that?
Yes, we do get feedback, and they also receive a graphic on the different types of bike lanes, class 1, class 2, class 3. And then in the Santa Rosa fair that we hosted, we had that dynamic graphic where they could put what kind of bike lane they wanted onto the road, so they could move it around. So we did get a lot of feedback. Sometimes people were okay with a line on the pavement, and I was surprised. But a lot of feedback is asking for separation.
Okay, thank you.
Reports. It was covered in their report.
Okay, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.
Any announcements? Okay.
So I missed last meeting. I apologize for that, but I didn't hear any discussion of two things that are going on that I think this committee ought to know about. One is that our local paper in Sonoma has been talking about on the headline here, a $2.7 million bike trail to nowhere. That's refers to the 8th Street East project that has presented here at the Measure M discussions for several years. So if you're not aware of it, and you're interested, you should look that up. And then the second thing is I've seen a letter circulating, I haven't seen it finalized yet, about the mascots process and the understanding that the headways on the SMART train currently are limited to 32 minutes, and we can't hit that sweet spot of 30-minute headways that I think the mascot study was recommending we hit. So there may be some needed track improvements to do that. I don't know if that's been discussed at this committee to date. So just heads up about these things for those of you who are following these important issues around the community. And my final announcement is that I was passed on the right today in the bike lane by a e-bike going about 35 miles an hour on Highway 12 on the way up here. And there was ironically a motorcycle riding right behind me. The motorcycle driver, who would have been licensed presumably, did not pass me, waiting for a safe place to do so and to do so on the left. The e-bike rider appeared to be younger and zipped into the bike lane and passed at that high rate of speed. So it's around us, and
It's not an e-bike. If it's going that fast,
It's an e-motorcycle.
motorcycle.
Yes.
And people are dissing e-bikes when what the problematic vehicles are actually legally not bikes, they're motorcycles.
I leaned on my horn pretty hard. He
Yeah.
got a little sanction.
Any other announcement? I see none. Meeting adjourned.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Chair.